The average time to run the marathon is around 4 hours 20, and you're thinking that you want to run the marathon sub 4. Even if this seems like a dream at the moment, it's your first marathon or you're a fair way off. Understanding what it takes will make you a smarter, faster runner and bring those 4+ hour times steadily closer. I'm Russ. I ran 2:43 at Sydney last year and I'm attempting to go sub 2:40 at Sydney in the coming weeks. So follow me if you like on Strava to see how my training block ends up and how I go on race day. Today isn't about elite times. This is for everyday runners who want clear, practical guidance to break 4 hours. In this video, I'll run through everything you need: the exact pace to target on race day and how to hit it, the performance benchmarks you should be at before you start a marathon block, the training you'll need to do, so structured weeks, long runs, key workouts, race day tactics, and the races that give you the best shot. The whole point is that when you turn up on the start line, you'll have the confidence to execute the perfect race, plus the training and strategy to get your marathon PR and walk away with a 3 something on your watch and the biggest smile of the year. So those of you that have watched my videos before, you know this. When you aim for a target time, you can't just wing it on race day. To run sub 4, you'll need a consistent training block, typically 12 to 16 weeks of structured work, and you'll need to carve out the time in your diary. It'll feel like a bit of a lifestyle shift for a while, but it's 100% worth it. When it all comes together on the day and you look back and you realize that that hard work you put in gave you that outcome that you wanted. All right, so let's dive into race day and the pace that you need to hold. So how does averaging 9:09 a mile, that's 5:41 a kilometer for 26.2 or 42.2 kilometers sound to you? Now, it might feel like a bit of a stretch from where you are right now, but with a solid 12, 16 week block of, let's say 4-ish runs a week, you'll get a lot closer each week, and come the end of the block, it will definitely be achievable. But what you've got to remember is this though: on race day, runners actually cover a little bit more than the official marathon distance. And that's because you have to weave, take tangents, and not always hit that ideal line. So you'll be running in the thick part of the race where there's quite a big number of runners. So you also might not be able to get up to speed quite quickly either at the start. And what you'll find is that you'll probably be running for an extra 3, 4, 5 minutes or so, longer than you need to because of all of that. And that's why I recommend training to feel comfortable at a slightly faster pace of about 9 minutes a mile, so about 5:35 a kilometer. And that gives you a bit of a buffer for all those small inefficiencies that add up on the race. Now, from a pacing perspective, run the race as evenly as possible, or perhaps even negatively split it if you can. And that's where you run the second half of the race faster than the first half of the race. Now, the number one thing that ruins sub 4 attempts is going out too fast. Even if you go in 10, 15 seconds a mile, 4, 5 seconds a kilometer too quick early on, that will cost you minutes at the end. So going out fast to bank time, that nearly always costs you later. It's a false fallacy. You need to save that energy for the back half of the race, so that if you're running faster than you need to be, you're wasting energy that you won't be able to get back once you enter that back half of the race. Now, it's understanding that racecraft and mindset that will set you apart from the rest. And if it's your first marathon, know that when you see the signs for the last mile or the last kilometer, you've always got that little bit extra that you can find at the end. So what are the performance requirements and what times should I be aiming for before I start my marathon block? Running a sub 4, that rarely comes from the couch. Couch to 5K, yeah, sure, that's a thing, but couch to sub 4 is not. So expect that you're going to need some base level fitness and some running under your belt in order to be able to make this possible. Otherwise, you're going to need to have one hell of a training block or come from a pretty decent athletic and sporting background to stand a chance. Now, there's some great online tools out there like Daniel's V-Dot calculator, and that gives you some really good indications of where you need to be across different race distances before you enter the training block to go sub 4. Now, the reason I say before is that it assumes that you're equally trained across all these distances, and it takes a lot more training to be as equally trained for the marathon as opposed to a 5K. So I'd feel a lot more confident if you were hitting these times already before starting the block. But I have seen people do it who are outside of those times, but they have got really stuck into their training and had a fantastic race on the day. Okay, so let's dive into our trusty V-Dot calculator. And here we can see the event distances. We're obviously going for the marathon, and we want to be looking at sub 4 hours. So if we put in the times for sub 4 hours. It gives us an equivalent race distances and times here. So look, half marathon 1:56:10, 10K of 52:24, 5K of 25:15. What I also really like about this calculator, obviously it gives you your paces there, but I also really like about this calculator is it also gives us approximate training speeds that we should be running at as well. So if we're looking at doing, let's say, a threshold session, you want to be aiming for about 8:32 per mile or 5:18 a kilometer. If you're doing fast reps, 7:50 a mile, 4:52 a kilometer. And then really importantly, your easy miles. So around 10:10 to 11:10 a mile or 6:20 to 7-minute kilometers. Jump into this. I'll put the link in the description below. Have a play around with it yourself. See what kind of times you're aiming at and where your equivalents are, and then work off of that. So let's talk aerobic base and threshold and understanding how your body will run the race. So whether you're chasing sub 4, sub 3, or you're an elite chasing sub 2, most of the race needs to live in your aerobic zone. So we're talking about zone 3 up to around the middle of zone 4. And that's where oxygen use is efficient and fatigue is manageable because you're not producing so much lactate that your body can't flush it. A pretty good test aside from the VDOT calculator, I find, is that if you can hold your target pace for around 9:10 per mile, about 5:40 a kilometer, for say 60 to 90 minutes in training, with your heart rate mostly in zone 3, you've got a good, solid aerobic base to build from. Your aerobic base is built by doing slow, steady, easy, consistent running. What you want to be doing in the race is staying in those zones as long as possible before you hit your lactate threshold, which is another big physiological lever your body's got. And that's basically where that nice balanced level of oxygen versus lactate starts to spill over. It reaches a tipping point where lactate accumulates faster than you can clear it, and that leads to fatigue. And that typically happens around the middle of zone 4 and above. So as the race goes on, you've got to work harder to maintain that same level of pace, and your heart rate starts to decouple. And that's a process called cardiac drift, happens to absolutely everyone, elites included. So once you tip over that threshold, there is literally no going back unless you slow down. And once you're over the threshold, the clock starts ticking. And you've got roughly between 45 to 60 minutes of running at that effort, where you're now burning more carbs than fats before you bonk and hit the wall. So training just under your threshold. So for many sub 4 runners, think about 7:50 a mile, 5:15 a kilometer pace in those threshold workouts. That pushes that point later and later in the race. So you can hold marathon pace long before that fatigue starts to set in. And by building and pushing that threshold out, you lengthen the time you can race strongly. In this video here, I gave a recap of the zones that I ran my most recent marathon in. Spoiler, it didn't go according to plan. So if you want some more details on thresholds and heart rates, check out that video. I'm going to push to 1,000 subscribers and I'm nearly there. So a quick reminder to please like and subscribe. If you've got any comments about marathons that you're targeting, where you feel you are versus the time that you want to achieve, I'm more than happy to answer any questions you've got. So drop them in the comments below and I'll do my best to answer them. So what does the training involve and how is it structured? Now, if you're serious about breaking 4 hours, you need to be serious about your training and hope not to just fluke it on race day. You need a structured block of consistent training to achieve it. Now, after you've built some of that aerobic base like we talked about earlier in the off season, it's time then to dedicate and get stuck into a 12 to 16 week marathon build. And that's where your weekly mileage ramps up gradually to hitting a peak. For sub 4 runners, peak weeks are usually in the 45 to 60 kilometer region, about 30 to 40 mile range. The exact number isn't as important as it is that you get consistently out there and push yourself week by week by week. If you want to build stamina and resilience, you have to stack week upon week in order to achieve it. Now, the foundation of your marathon training and where the majority of your progress will come from, that should be built around easy, steady running. So I'm talking zone 2 work, aerobic, conversational pace runs. That helps develop that endurance without placing excessive strain on your body. Now, there was a study in 2024 of recreational marathon runners, and it found that those successfully running sub 3 hour marathons, so sub 3, not sub 4, but they were completing roughly 34 miles or 55 kilometers a week of just easy running, with their faster workouts added on top. So while that research targets sub 3 runners, what we can take away from it is pretty clear, is that it's more easy miles equals better adaptation. So typically those runs should be around 6:15, 7 minute per kilometer, 10 to 11 minute a mile. Steady, relaxed, under control. It's normal to feel like those runs aren't doing much at first, but over a few months, I guarantee you'll notice that you're running much more efficiently. Less effort and a lower heart rate for the same pace. But it's also super important to understand that pace variation is essential as well. So you want to include 1 or 2 faster sessions each week. That will improve your aerobic capacity and boost your speed endurance. And those sessions, they can alternate between VO2 max intervals. My favorite example of that would be something like 6 by 800 meters running at 5K pace with 1 minute 30 rest recovery in between. And a tempo or threshold type run, so 3 by 10 minutes at slightly faster than goal marathon pace with a 1 kilometer float. And that will be edging towards half marathon pace. Now, those workouts, they teach your body to cope with that fatigue, process that lactate efficiently, and maintain strength when things get tough. And then lastly, you've got the long run, which is the cornerstone of your week. You gradually want to build your long runs up week by week by week throughout the block, getting to around 34 kilometers or so, 20, 21 miles over the course of that training block. And as your fitness grows, begin incorporating stretches of just below your goal marathon pace on those long runs, particularly in the latter stages of the block. And that will help replicate that sensation of maintaining pace on tired legs. Long runs are also ideal for practicing nutrition, testing race day shoes, getting comfortable with all your new gear, everything that you're going to be wearing on the day, and practicing your nutrition strategy. Oh, and don't neglect strength training too, which many runners overlook, myself included. 2 sessions a week would be perfect, 1 as a minimum, and that'll be focusing on heavy compound lifts like squats, lunges, deadlifts. That helps to prevent injury and improve your running efficiency. So you want to be aiming for 3 sets of between 6 to 8 reps, particularly paying attention to single leg movements to correct those imbalances. Remember, running is a single-legged sport. My top tip, and something that also gets forgotten about, is your recovery in your sleep. So you make all those adaptations for your running during your recovery time and when you're asleep. So when you're in a training block, it's super important to prioritize them. Sleep as much as you can, looking for at least 8 hours, hopefully even 9, and listen to your body. If one week your body's screaming at you to not do a threshold session that you've got planned, switch it to an easy run, but don't do that every week. What races are there to target? Well, some marathons are faster than others, so give yourself the best possible chance of getting a PR by running a faster one. A marathon, at the end of the day, is a marathon. So you want to find a cool, flat race that's not going to risk a heat wave or a hurricane on the day. Now, marathons have got quite expensive over the years. What you'll actually find is that your local marathon is often quite a lot cheaper and can quite often be just as fast, if not faster, than some of the big ones. But if you're in the US, some of the fastest and most popular options, they include CIM, Chicago, Houston, and the California Surf City Marathon. In the UK, you've got Manchester, along with Edinburgh, Cardiff, and the London Marathon. Now, they're all known for having relatively flat courses, and of course, London, especially for its crowd. Those of us that are in Oz, the Gold Coast Marathon, Sydney, especially now it's a major, but trust me, each of those ones can be prone to a hot day. You can perhaps look at Ballarat Marathon, which has been talked about as a great option to avoid that heat, or Canberra. Across Europe, top fast marathons include Valencia, Berlin, Prague, Amsterdam, and Rotterdam. A lot of people have been mentioning. I suppose the Netherlands is very flat, so that's probably quite a good choice as well. Chasing a sub 4 is more than chasing just a number. It's a goal that rewards your consistency, your discipline, and your smart training. And with the right plan, some easy miles, targeted workouts, and a bit of racecraft, it's absolutely within reach for all of you. Picture yourself crossing the line, watch on your wrist, 3:59:59. That feeling of knowing you did the work, executed the plan, and earned it is worth every single moment of all that uncomfortable kilometers and miles in training. Ta-ra.